Staff Sergeant Zoe Brooks knew the cartel lieutenant thought he was being clever when he unloaded her from the truck bed and left her zip-tied in the Sonoran Desert, 90 kilometers from anything resembling civilization, with no water, no gear, and the afternoon sun climbing toward a brutal 118 degrees. "You, Delta Force," he said in heavily accented English as she knelt in the sand with her hands bound behind her back, "always so tough, so elite. But elite needs water like everyone else, yes." He laughed, the sound harsh against the vast silence. "Let's see how tough you are after 3 days in the sun. Maybe you crawl back, maybe you beg, maybe you just die." Through the sweat stinging her eyes, Zoe looked up at him with the calm earned from 7 years in one of the most brutal military units on Earth. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction: sand, scattered creosote bushes, distant mountains shimmering in heat waves, no shade, no water, no equipment. The cartel had stripped her of her M4, her plate carrier, her sidearm, her radio, her GPS, every piece of gear that made a modern operator effective. They believed they had reduced her to just another vulnerable human. They were about to learn what Delta Force selection truly created. When she refused to respond, the lieutenant kicked sand at her. Nothing to say, no threats, no brave words about American soldiers coming to save you. Zoe remained silent, assessing. The sun's angle suggested roughly 2 p.m., 5 hours until sunset, 8 until full darkness. She estimated the cartel compound was 90 kilometers east. She had counted the truck's speed and time during transport. The temperature already hovered around 115 degrees and would peak near 120 before dropping to 60 at night. Most people would survive only 3 hours in direct sunlight without water. 3 days was a death sentence. But Zoe had more than survival skills, she had Delta training. "Your team is already dead," the lieutenant continued. "By tomorrow we know everything about American operations. And you die alone here. No rescue, no honor, just heat and thirst." He climbed into the truck and drove away, leaving her in the crushing silence of the Sonoran Desert. When the dust plume finally disappeared, Zoe moved. The heavy-duty zip ties were tough, but Delta taught techniques most operators never learned. She contorted her arms, dislocated her left thumb with practiced efficiency, slipped her hand through the tie, then popped the thumb back into place with only a muted grunt. Free, she rose and surveyed the barren landscape: no landmarks, no visible water, shade only in distant mountains perhaps 15 kilometers away, but she didn't see emptiness, she saw resources. Creosote bushes meant potential moisture, sand held cool layers beneath, barrel cacti contained extractable water, wildlife patterns revealed hidden sources. Delta Force didn't just train shooters, it trained survivors. Left here to die, they had unknowingly placed her where technology didn't matter and the human mind determined victory. What she accomplished over the next 72 hours would become legend. She turned the desert into a weapon and used it to dismantle an entire cartel operation without firing a single shot. 96 hours earlier, in a tense briefing room in El Paso, Agent Morrison, mid-40s, weathered, exhausted, had explained that the Salazar cartel's desert compound was moving $50 million worth of fentanyl monthly. Lieutenant Colonel David Kane, Delta team leader, 6'3", gray-haired, and battle-forged, questioned why Delta was needed instead of DIA. Morrison cited military-grade weapons, 3 American hostages, and hardened defenses. Zoe, 28, one of only 3 women ever to complete Delta selection, understood instantly. This required surgical precision. After the briefing, she meticulously prepared her gear until Kane approached. She admitted she was worried about the desert, its heat, lack of cover, minimal water. Kane reminded her that her survival skills were why she had passed selection. At 0200 hours, the team inserted by helicopter 15 kilometers from the target, moving through rough nighttime terrain. Zoe took overwatch position, spotting defensive machine guns and rotating guards. But at 0537, an unanticipated patrol emerged from a hidden gully, initiating a firefight. Their element of surprise vanished. The compound flooded with armed fighters, and Kane ordered a withdrawal, but the cartel used terrain to flank them. Zoe made a split-second decision to draw fire away from her team. Ignoring orders, she displaced north while engaging targets, allowing the others to escape. She promised to meet them at Rally Point Charlie in 12 hours, 90 kilometers away. She ran through the night until the cartel surrounded and overwhelmed her, capturing her and eventually abandoning her in the desert, their fatal mistake. At roughly 3 p.m., With temperatures exceeding 117 degrees, Zoe implemented survival week techniques. She dug beneath a creosote bush to find cooler sand, created an evaporative cooling garment from her dampened uniform, and began searching for water using wildlife patterns. She found a seep spring, filtered the water through her shirt, and rehydrated slowly. She then crafted primitive tools, saguaro ribs for weapons, creosote resin for adhesive, stone flakes for cutting edges, transforming the environment into a tactical kit. When night fell, she began the 90-kilometer trek toward the compound, traveling by stars and covering 40 kilometers the first night. After resting during the day, she advanced again, observing compound security from afar. They watched roads, not the deep desert, never imagining someone could cross 60 kilometers on foot. On the third night, she infiltrated, targeting their critical vulnerability, the water supply. She contaminated the well with natural desert toxins, not lethal, but debilitating, ensuring the entire compound would be violently ill within hours. By midday, chaos erupted. Security collapsed. Zoe slipped inside unnoticed, found her team bound but alive, and cut their restraints with a sharpened stone. Their shock was palpable. "How are you alive?" Kane asked. "Delta Force training, sir," she replied. Together, they walked through a compound too sick to resist, stole a vehicle, and drove north to safety. The debriefing lasted 3 days. Analysts questioned her unconventional methods. She corrected them when they called it chemical warfare. It was simply the tactical use of natural resources. She explained her plant knowledge came from both Delta Survival Week and her Arizona upbringing. 2 weeks later she received the Distinguished Service Cross, though the classified report of her techniques was already reshaping survival doctrine across Special Operations Forces. Soon after, she found herself in the Australian outback teaching a joint Delta SAS-JTF-2 survival course. She showed them photos of the Sonoran terrain where she'd endured 4 days alone. "The desert isn't your enemy," she told them. "It's neutral. It kills the ignorant and sustains the knowledgeable." She explained that survival wasn't strength or willpower but systematic application of knowledge, reading wildlife, extracting water, creating tools, exploiting environmental vulnerabilities. Kane later told her she had changed survival training across Allied special forces. Even the cartel lieutenant they captured couldn't believe she survived. He called it impossible. She corrected him. Improbable, but achievable through training, knowledge, and refusal to quit. Months later, Zoe deployed again, this time to the Kalahari Desert on a classified mission deemed nearly impossible. She entered that environment with absolute confidence that it held every resource she needed. Because Delta Force doesn't create superhumans, it creates operators who understand that with knowledge and relentless resolve, the impossible becomes merely difficult, and difficult is just another word for the mission. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.